sorry to call this out, but in anime, just kind of like have this blank expression. Unfortunately, Ein was a very good example of this. You could not tell what that corgi was thinking. There's not a thought in that head. Understanding their subtle cues is key to capturing their true personality on paper, which is exactly what we'll explore today as I teach you how to draw dogs with life and character. While dogs have the same general anatomy, the specifics, now that's where it gets you. Some big differences, just basically size, right? So we have this giant Great Dane, and then this little tiny Chihuahua. They're actually very similar. They have a similar wide chest, narrow tuck to the abdomen, basically proportionate length of legs. Another breed that you would think is totally different is the Saluki. But if you look, see, same wide chest, narrow waist, a little narrower than the other two, but still same tail, and legs are proportional to their body. Now, if you want to get weird, because, animals are weird, what we'll do is we'll look at a bulldog. Now that's a weird dog. This dog, compared to all the other breeds we've seen, very different. Almost rectangular shaped, not much of a tuck on the abdomen, much at all. They have what they call brachiocephalic face, which just means squish face. And yeah, their front legs and back legs are not in proportion with each other. If you look at the length of the front legs compared to the length of the back legs, they're pretty different. The anatomy between all of these different breeds is fairly similar, but the thing that really makes the difference, that thing is their personality. Each breed has its own little traits that we've come to recognize are a part of the breed. For instance, the Great Dane, very tall, very regal, also super goofy. You'll know popular Great Danes such as, Scooby-Doo is the only main one I can think of. Not a standard coloration for Great Danes though. Salukis are more well known for their aloofness. They are very independent dogs. They do not seek out human affection or even guidance. They are like cats in that, I know how to do this. I know what I'm doing. You just go over there and leave me alone. A bulldog is known for being pretty stubborn, and in a way, they're their own kind of independent and a little less confident based and more just like, I do what I want based. And you can display all of these through their personality and even their creature design. So we can take the same dog, right? We'll take the bulldog, for instance, typically stubborn, very, I do what I want, and we'll do these 3 different types of personalities. So say you have like a really confident, stubborn dog, like a dog that knows exactly why it doesn't want to do what it wants to do, and it's not afraid to tell you about it. You're going to puff that chest out, you're going to make that head stay up very tall, even though they're not a very tall breed. We're going to switch gears and do a really shy dog. Sometimes based on how they grew up, dogs have different personalities, and you can have a shy bulldog. They don't have much in the way of tails, but you can still have like their whole back end really tucked in, kind of head lowered, kind of like very sunken into itself and looking up and looking kind of sad. And given, enough prompting, you can get a playful bulldog almost no matter what. And they play real hard, and they tend to do this like bouncy, loopy, kind of like silly, sometimes they spin around in circles, movements. They're very cute. And not only can we just depict this through their whole body, but even if we just draw their face, we can convey all of these same emotions. Dogs actually evolved to have different facial expressions just to talk to us. We should feel pretty special, but also we kind of made them that way. So maybe we shouldn't take too much credit. Some general different things that dogs express themselves with are wide eyes. Now that can be a few different things. If their pupils are dilated and blown out, they could be super, super excited about something. Maybe they're looking at their favorite treat or a ball. Or maybe their eyes are super big because they're really worried about something, right? And they have like a lot of like white on the side of the eyes. And that's just the sclera, which dogs have. Or here's a pro tip. The more sclera, the white part of the eye that you show on a dog, depending, you can get weird and uncanny valley with it, but the more you show, the more human-like their expression is. Not into full anthropomorphic territory, but instead just kind of like gives them an extra little push to make them look like you can really connect with them. In fact, that's actually what I do with my artwork, and a lot of people comment all the time that your pet portraits look so expressive. That's all I'm doing. I'm just showing more sclera than a lot of other pet portrait artists do. Now, depending on what you're going for and what's kind of happening with the dog and the piece that you're working on, the eyes can be small too. Like maybe they're really concentrating, they're sniffing something, they're squinting up their eyes a little bit. Or they're super relaxed, they have a nictitating membrane, a third eyelid. And sometimes when they're really sleepy, and especially dogs with droopy features, you can kind of see it while their eyes half closed. But given the dog, you can really make it work for them in their character design. So you have the eyes. You also have the eyebrows. In fact, I've coined this term myself. It's not an official term, but I call the little eyebrows that dogs have eye dots. But they just have very distinct features. You can see actually a line. My Corgi shows it really well. So does my pit bull, of this line where you can really see up and around their eye dot. And depending on what you do with that, they can totally change the expression. Up can be super surprised or excited, or depending on what you do with the rest of the face and the eyes, it can look really sad and really pouty. But also you can kind of add a little extra. They can't really furrow their brows a lot like we can, but a little bit. And when you give them an aggressive expression on their face, have showing teeth or just kind of like, being sort of annoyed, even if you don't have a teeth bared look, then you can kind of push those eyebrows down a little bit into an angry expression. You also want to pay attention to the ears, right? So I have one dog here with floppy ears and one dog here with pricked ears, which is what they call them with shepherds and corgis, where their ears naturally just stand up like that without assistance or cropping. And I'll show you like the different ways that they can look. Murphy, while he has these like big floppy ears, they can flip inside out, they can kind of flop around. Sometimes when he's lying on his back, they look like they're kind of pointed because they're lying up on the ground and being supported that way. And he just looks like a big goofball. And dogs with naturally up ears is what I used to call them a long time ago and still do. I think that there's a few different things you can do with their ears as well. One is obviously the default kind of standing up at attention look. And a different other way you can look at their ears is kind of have them flattened. Now, flattened to the side, it's what we call airplane ears. It can show like a pensive, tense expression, a little less calm. And then you have the other flattened where they're flattened flat back. And that is if a dog is either acting aggressively toward another dog or person, or just very, very scared or unsure of itself. And obviously floppy-eared dogs can do the same, but it can be a little bit interesting to figure out all the folds in their ears. And that kind of leads into what is the mouth doing in all this. You can have kind of a calm pant where their tongue is just out a little bit and they're just breathing. Dogs actually sweat through their mouth. They can't sweat through their skin, but that is why a dog might be panting. A lot of times it can be due to stress. Now, not every stress is negative stress, right? They can also pant from like happy, and they played after the ball for a while, so they're panting to just kind of like catch their breath and also cool themselves down. Now, my pit bull has the best smiley, panting face that pretty much I think exists in dogs. A lot of breeds kind of have this feature, and I really like it in him as well. Now, on the other spectrum, say they're not too hot and they're just being aggressive, there's a few other things that you can do to portray that. Yeah, you can obviously show teeth. The biggest little pro tip I'll give is that the bottom, ours do the same thing actually. The bottom teeth come up in front of the more prominent canine tooth on the top. So that's the face, right? That's how the face can portray personality. I'll get a little bit more into the details of specific body part. The huge thing in dogs is the tail. Not all wags are created equal. Many times the dog is wagging its tail, and depending on the wag, it does not mean that it is happy to see you or friendly. You really have to see like the way it's wagging its tail. If the tail is like swooping, even excitedly fast, but like from large whipping circles from side to side, then they're generally more happy to see you. But if their tail is technically wagging, but it's short and very tense, that is not a dog that is happy to see you, or it's not happy about the situation. Also, where is it wagging? Is their tail usually held at like an angle, like parallel to their body, and they're wagging it, back and forth and in a kind of like slow, happy way? I've heard also that if they wag certain to the left or right, that means something, but that's semantics and details. Or is that tail straight up when it's usually, flat or lower You also have the low, like the dog's tail is really, really low, and maybe it's wagging even underneath and between its legs. It's wagging just a little bit, because it's so scared, and it's actually a nervous tick at that point. So there's so much about the tail that tells you so much about what's going on within the motion of the dog. Learning about dog behavior and how they interact with each other and with us as humans will help inform these types of choices that you might want to make in your art. Like, here's the different expressions that we just covered. So you raise the eyebrow, but change the face to be more aggressive. That's an emotion going on there. And you just change all these different features here, and you just kind of mix and match and see what you get. So now we're going to get into some common mistakes that happen when people are drawing dogs. So here's one I see a lot, especially, sorry to call this out, but in anime, just kind of like have this blank expression. Unfortunately, Ein was a very good example of this. You could not tell what that corgi was thinking. There's not a thought in that head. So definitely add stuff to the personality of the dogs in the face, like the eyes especially. It doesn't mean that you have to have super realistic eyes with the white sclera showing and everything. You don't have to do that. You can have an expressive face with just 2 dots, a nose, and like a little tiny mouth. Little, number 3 on its side. You can just do things with it that kind of like indicate more than just this blank, dead-eyed stare. You can change the mouth, have it more like a happy pant, or just do the little thing with the mouth on the side. Kind of lift up the lip a little bit, make it look a little more smiley. So unless you're trying to do like a very stiff, tense pose, because that is the emotion you're trying to convey in the piece, most people, when you're doing like a pet portrait, aren't trying to convey that. Then what you might do is like a really expressive sketch, and then you try to get into all the weeds of the anatomy of the dog and making sure that this muscle is fiber is attaching to that one, and that's just going to tighten up your drawing and make it look really stiff and like it's not alive anymore. And everything we're doing is trying to convey that a piece of paper can look alive, right? You can get stuck drawing every individual hair, and you can if that's fun for you. But if not, there's a lot you can do where you just sort of indicate, and that can be sometimes more impactful than drawing out every individual hair. Another final thing that I see sometimes in art is that while maybe the face is expressive, the body's just not contributing. It's like the artist forgot to actually like include expressive ears and tail. I'll do this a lot in my portraits where maybe in the reference photos, the dog isn't showing its tail, but I'll just kind of add it there and maybe even draw some little lines around, just kind of indicate that it's happy. Like in this sketch, I have this cat in the middle, obviously the ruler of the roost, and these 2, guardians next to him that have felt the end of that cat's claws maybe a time or 2 and are very respectful of him. And you can see in their personality and their faces that they have a deference for that cat that is hard-earned. And I did that through the different things that I did with the body, not just the facial expression. So a big part of what I wanted to share with you today is to help convey the personality of the dog within the painting or the portrait that you're trying to do. It's not all about their actual physical looks. In fact, sometimes I've seen hyper-realistic art, and I don't know a thing about that dog or its personality just by looking at it. It's a very pretty piece of art, but I can't get anything from it. I don't have an emotional connection because I don't know that dog specifically, and the image itself just isn't giving anything back. Sure, it looks amazing. The details are great, but there's no personality being shown through the artwork. And I think with dogs especially, they're so personable. They are our best friends for a reason. And I just think it's a shame that sometimes we portray them so realistically that it kind of neuters them of their personality, actually. So remember to have the anatomy support the personality, not control it. Because the real heart of it is the dog's expression and emotions. I have a dog personality cheat sheet, so if you'd like to download it, you can below for free. Keep drawing and use reference.